Well, the Ohio State Buckeyes absolutely throttled the Maryland Terrapins yesterday afternoon, 66-17. What did we learn about C.J. Stroud, about Garrett Wilson, about this defense? We have seen some noticeable improvements from the Silver Bullets, who I think have certainly earned that moniker back with the way they've played the last couple of weeks. Things are trending in the right direction as the Buckeyes head into their off week. Lots to talk about, and boy, oh boy, was it a wild day in college football yesterday. What we learned, Buckeye Breakdown, starts on this beautiful Sunday morning. Next, here, Buckeyes Now. We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Well, happy Sunday morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us here on Buckeyes Now. I'm Brendan Gulick with Coach Tommy Zagorski. After the Buckeyes put together, I think we can say this now, for the second week in a row, their best performance of the year. And I realize half the season is still in front of us, Coach, but this is certainly a positive sign now. The Buckeyes this last month, ever since the Woody Hayes Athletic Center was theoretically on fire about a month ago, we have seen some noticeable improvements all the way around. And I agree. Ryan Day said this team looks a bit different. They certainly are showing that.
Absolutely. I mean, back-to-back weeks against Big Ten foes who are not necessarily your historically looming Big Ten opponents, but Big Ten opponents that are growing, that are developing, that are becoming better programs. Ohio State still is thumping these teams. And they did it with outstanding defense, with great execution on the offensive side of the football, and a little bit of spark on special teams to really mix it all together to make for a 66-17 drubbing yesterday at Ohio Stadium.
Why don't we start with C.J. Stroud, because he was, with the exception of maybe the defense, I think C.J. Stroud was the biggest topic of conversation, not just coming into the year, but certainly after a 1-1 start and then a lackluster performance for him personally in week 3 against Tulsa. CJ now, after taking the Akron week off to try to get that shoulder right, he has been absolutely unbelievable in these last 2 games. I'm going to read to you the drive chart for when CJ Stroud has been on the field the last 2 games. You ready? Against Rutgers. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 touchdown. That's pretty good. And then yesterday against Maryland, touchdown, 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 touchdown. They had to kneel down to end the first half. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I mean, I don't know how you define perfect, but he's literally 736 passing yards and 10 touchdown passes the last 2 weeks. The Buckeyes are moving the ball better than anybody in college football, and this kid does not look like a redshirt freshman.
No, he's the most productive 19-year-old in the country. No disrespect to the guy that's slinging burgers at Burger King right now. But, I mean, this is unbelievable how great of a performance he's having. I think a lot of coaches around college football are DMing or texting or tweeting or Snapchatting or calling Ryan Day and asking him, what do you guys do in this week where you play a MAC team? Because this guy has come back and just looks more polished. He looks more confident. He looks like the guy that we kind of thought he was going to be going into the season, and he is exceeding expectations right now. He's leading the most explosive offense in the country, and he's doing it with not only his mind, but also you can see the guys are rallying around him. He's got a great demeanor about him. He's cool. He's calm. He's confident. He's who you want playing quarterback for one of the top 10 teams in the country.
He has excelled and passed every test these last couple of weeks. And I think if nothing else, we should at least acknowledge that, look, Rutgers and Maryland have gotten better, but they are still not considered to be top half of the league. But I think that level of competition was better than what he saw against Tulsa. And certainly he struggled a bit against Minnesota in week 1. I mean, he was okay. And against Oregon, the Buckeye offense was not the reason that they lost that game. So I look at this and try to put it in some perspective and say, look, he's building some confidence. He's finding his rhythm. Rutgers and Maryland defensively, obviously the numbers were great, but those defenses did play faster than what he saw against Tulsa after he had that week off and didn't play against Akron. So to me, this is still building that base for him, and the statistical success is great, right? But to me, that's kind of gravy. I like the way he is processing the game. I like the way he's keeping plays alive with his feet when he needs to. He's obviously throwing the ball with more confidence and with more velocity because that shoulder is not bothering him. The offensive line is more than doing their part in keeping him up. And now CJ's got, 13 days here to do whatever he needs to do to keep this going, to keep getting healthy. I don't know what the status of his shoulder is. He says it's fine after he said it wasn't fine. Is it 100%? Is it 90%? I don't know. But he can have 2 weeks here of not playing in a game to make sure he is as healthy as possible for what is going to be a really important stretch run against some very good defenses. And all of a sudden in a college football playoff race that looks super wide open. We can dive into that more in a little bit. But for me, it's all about him needing to stack a couple of games on top of each other to just feel like, okay, we've got this thing. We know what we're doing. Now we can build and go into the meat of the season.
Exactly. I can't say enough about his mental preparation. And this is what the thing that from the beginning of the season, I've been blown away by CJ Stroud is his decision making. Even we go back to the interception against Minnesota. It was off of an RPO that bounced off the hands of a receiver. I mean, he just missed on the throw a little bit. He doesn't make bad decisions. He's making great decisions. And when you make those types of decisions, that's why you're yielding a 226.1 passer rating against Maryland and having the opportunities that he has. And it also is due in part to the architect of all this, Ryan Day, who's doing a phenomenal job of getting receivers open, schematically attacking teams, understanding if they're in man, they're in zone, and really just having the right call. And, sometimes it's almost like he's playing a video game. And I know there's got to be somebody in the box that's helping him a little bit because of all the check system stuff that Ohio State does. It's important for him to continue to execute this way and really maximize the opportunities that his coaching staff and his teammates are presenting him.
Just one more note on CJ. So obviously he's played 5 games. The team's played 6. He already has 3 300-yard games in the first 5 starts of his career. That's tied for 5th most in a single season in school history. Of course, Dwayne Haskins had the school record 9 300-yard passing performances in 2018. But what Stroud did yesterday is right up there with one of the best individual passing performances ever. I still think that Justin Fields in the Sugar Bowl last year had the single best individual game for a Buckeye in program history last year. And we could do a whole podcast on that. But CJ Stroud became the first Ohio State Buckeye quarterback ever, as you pointed out, Z, in the Grading the Buckeyes article, it's about to go up on the site, to throw for 400 yards, at least 5 touchdowns, and not throw an interception. Dwayne Haskins never did that. So, we're seeing CJ continue to make good decisions with the football, and all that much more reason why you look at these last 2 weeks, no turnovers. That's just as important to me as throwing for a bazillion yards. You're not giving the ball away.
Preparation, manifesting, and execution. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing. It's cold-blooded. It's PME. Let's keep getting after it. And hopefully he continues on this course and can rewrite the record books here at Ohio State.
All right, let's shift to Garrett Wilson for a moment. We've lauded the wide receiving core quite a bit, and they deserve that praise. But a milestone yesterday for both Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. We'll start with Garrett. He went over 100 career catches yesterday. Wilson now the 22nd player in program history to do that. He's got 104 catches for 1,701 yards and 17 touchdowns in his Ohio State career. I know Ohio State's going to continue to lean on him the rest of this season. When you look at this wide receiving core, Z, I know you consistently use the word special, right? And I don't want that to get overblown, because sometimes when it becomes the same topic of conversation repeatedly, it loses its luster. But like, this group is legit. There are probably multiple NFL first-round draft picks on the same team at the same time in the same position group. For a redshirt freshman quarterback, come on.
No, I mean he literally is throwing to an all-star team. It's one of those things where you hear about professionals and you hear about different guys when they get somewhere and they go, "Wow, every receiver I get to throw to is just remarkable." I mean, to have that all on a collegiate roster, and there's guys that are standing on the sideline that haven't played yet that may even have more potential than some of these guys that we're seeing execute on Saturdays, which is remarkable. I think I mentioned it in the article grading the Buckeyes. There were 17 catches for 307 yards between the three of them yesterday. That is video game-like. Each one of these guys has a minimum of 29 yards or more on their longs. They have 4 touchdowns generated out of the group. And then to watch these guys, and I know I stress this every week, but then to watch them on special teams, to watch Jackson Smith and Jagba run down on kicks and cover stuff. I mean, like, he's doing that with 5 catches for 103 yards. I mean, these guys are elite, and they're buying into the culture. And you could tell they truly love playing at Ohio State. It's something really special to them. And the hardest thing probably right now is for Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson. You know, they're at a buffet right now, but these guys are hungry. You got to feed them all. And we talked about this after the Minnesota game and you know, really after the Tulsa game as well. Like, you have to have the ability that when you're not throwing the ball to these guys, you have to figure out a way to keep them motivated. Wide receivers love touching the football. They love it. It's why they became wide receivers. And right now they're slinging it around the yard. They're distributing the ball, you know, effectively. I think yesterday Chris Olave had 7 catches. Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jagba each had 5 respectively. That's an impressive day of distributing the football to a really talented group. And to get it to menu, we talk about as an offensive coordinator on your schedule somewhere along your call sheet, you're going to have get it tos. Well, the get it tos are your like elite guys that you want to get the ball to. Right now, like, Ryan Day's call sheet is a get it tos. Oh, wait, we can't get the ball to Chris Olave on this one. Oh, it's going to go to Garrett Wilson. It's going to go to Jackson Smith and Jagba. It's going to get to Jeremy Ruckert. It's going to go to Travion Henderson. It's going to go to insert whoever you want. It's ridiculous. And it's awesome to see it manifest in so many points and so many great opportunities for the Buckeyes. If they can continue to just play this style of brand of football, it's going to give them a chance against literally anybody in the country.
I want to quickly acknowledge Chris Olave. 5 touchdown catches now, the last 3 games combined, 29 touchdowns in his career. That gives him sole possession of 3rd place on Ohio State's all-time touchdown list. The only 2 receivers with more are Devin Smith, who had 30, and David Boston, who has 34. I have to think Olave is going to threaten that record here in the next few weeks. You never really know how games are going to go, but gee, I mean, if he only needs 5 to tie David Boston, you certainly like the chances of that potentially happening. And I got to tell you what, I never really thought when Chris Olave came on campus that we could potentially be talking about him as the greatest receiver in the history of Ohio State football. But if he eclipses that touchdown record, he's got to at least be in the conversation. What he's done is so impressive, and the fact that he was so wildly under-recruited is just my favorite part of his whole story. Nobody paid attention to him, and if you haven't brushed up on his recruiting story, it's pretty darn cool. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to kind of see how he has emerged, and this 1-2 punch of him and Garrett Wilson has been great, and Jackson Smith and Jagba is showing some extremely high-end ability too.
Brendan, one thing about being an under-recruited athlete, I don't know how many guys are under-recruited that have Ohio State as an offer. So, he got the right one. It's like getting married. You don't have to have 17 different suitors to get married. When you find the right one, it can be a beautiful marriage. So he found the right one in Ohio State. And kudos to Chris Olave, but from the second he stepped foot on the campus here in Columbus, he had a chip on his shoulder. He wanted to develop. He wanted to grow. He wanted to be elite. And he does it every single day with his process, the way he develops, the way he grows, and the way he carries others around him. So kudos to him, and it's fun that we're watching history.
Those guys are a big reason why the Buckeyes are averaging 54.5 points per game the last 4 games. Wow. Okay. All right.
Well, you don't want to start your college fantasy defense against the Buckeyes right now.
I mean, think about it. The worst offensive performance for Ohio State this year, statistically, was Minnesota. It's the only game the Buckeyes didn't go over the 500-yard mark. They still lead the country in yards per game and in yards per play, and we're halfway through the year now. There's enough of a sample size that's not fluky. They've done it against 3 different Big Ten teams and a potential college football playoff type team in Oregon. it's not like they've racked it up all against mid-major teams. So, this Indiana team the Buckeyes are going to see after their off week, look out. This is quite an offense Ohio State has going right now. Before we transition to the defense, the funniest thing that happened yesterday happened post-game, and it is one of my favorite post-game quotes I've heard in a very long time. This is from, if you haven't seen this, Maryland head coach Mike Locksley regarding the Ohio State wide receivers. This is a quote. Our coverage technique was obviously poor. It looked like guys were falling out of airplanes. They were that wide open. Again, as a coaching staff, we got to do a better job calling plays that the guys we have can execute. We made that adjustment at the end of the half and started playing cover 2, which took away the deep ball. We needed to stop the deep ball. We gave up too many yards. It was like 7-on-7 out there in the first half. He literally said that it was like guys were falling out of airplanes. They were so wide open.
Brendan, not to make a ploy on Chad earlier this week, but it looks like I think DB Cooper had a catch for 9 yards yesterday. So people falling out of the sky, CJ Stroud was finding.
Shots fired at Brett Hiltbrand. I'll make sure he sees this. Oh man, and look, Maryland's strength, I think, of their defense was, their front seven, and to their credit, Travion Henderson had a quiet 102-yard rushing performance on 16 carries. It was all about the passing attack yesterday. And Maryland, I thought, did a decent job of generating some pressure at times, but they couldn't get to Stroud. I think they had 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss the whole game. And if Ohio State's offensive line is going to continue to play with that level of efficiency, your skill position players being that talented, they're going to just pick you apart. One thing we didn't talk enough about last night in the postgame show when we were kind of touching on different areas of the team, how about Matthew Jones? Ohio State has talked so much about trying to get the 5 best offensive linemen on the field. And for the most part, at least at the start of the season and as we've moved along, Nick Petit-Frere, Thayer Munford, Luke Whippler, Paris Johnson, and DeJuan Jones from left to right across the line. But when Thayer went down a couple of weeks ago, Matthew Jones slides in and shows like, hey, I'm pretty good. I can handle this. Thayer comes back. He's healthy. He's the block O guy. I mean, you're not going to not put him out there. And yet yesterday, throughout the course of the game, Matthew Jones was inserted at left guard and at right guard and was playing a significant number of meaningful snaps. It's like the Buckeyes have 6 offensive linemen for 5 spots that they feel comfortable moving in there. That's pretty unusual.
Well, it's great to have that versatility, and that's always, as an old offensive line coach, the biggest thing you look at is not necessarily who's the best tackle, who's the best guard, who's the best center, who's your best 5.
Sure.
Who's your best 5 on the field? Who do you have that puts you together in that situation? I even, and this is a poor comparison, but I even remember when I was at John Carroll in 2014 when we were record-setting offense, and I think number 1 offense in the country that year. We shattered every record at John Carroll. I used to rotate guards all the time, and people go, why are you rotating these guards? It just depended on which guys was which. And, one guy's a high school defensive coordinator. The other guy works for Smuckers as a financial analyst. So they both had great careers after their time at John Carroll. But rotating those guys through at those different positions, it maximizes your versatility. It maximizes the health of those guys, and it keeps them engaged. And like you said, Brendan, 6 guys on the offensive line. If Jeremy Ruckert didn't block so well, I wouldn't be shocked if you moved Paris Johnson out to a tight end spot. They kind of have a big boy package and let the studs up front with stud go eat.
You've been sitting on that one, I can tell.
No, I just came. Sorry.
Fair enough. By the way, I am really enjoying all the interaction I'm seeing in the comment threads. I love that we have a group that likes to interact with each other. That's kind and not screaming at each other. That doesn't happen very often. So thanks for being good to each other and following Ohio State football, but having some fun and being good to each other. That's really cool.
Hey, it's the Lord's Day. It's a Victory Sunday. Let's all join with each other in OH.
I made it. I'm with you. IO. Defensively, before we start, kind of topic shifting here to the more national scene, because I think that's where a lot of people's interest is. I did come across a note that I literally read. I'm like, wait, really? The Ohio State rush defense, the first 2 weeks, obviously was a bit of a problem spot. They have not allowed a rushing touchdown the last 4 games. That is pretty remarkable. I realize maybe the rushing attack hasn't been what it was with Mo Ibrahim at Minnesota and both CJ Verdell and Travis Dye from Oregon, but still, they haven't given up a rushing touchdown in a month. That's pretty impressive.
It's remarkable. I mean, Brendan, yesterday they yielded 1.6 yards a carry against Maryland. I mean, I'm not saying Maryland is the best rushing team in college football, but to be able to do that and not give up a rushing touchdown, I mean, that means you hit an explosive ball, over the top and you're down at the 2-yard line. Like, teams are going to try to run the ball 3 of the 4 times to get in, and they haven't yielded one yet. I mean, even the Akron Zips 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, as the dates go, they were down in the red zone and they couldn't punch it in. They had to throw the ball. So you look at it, this Buckeye defense is doing a tremendous job. They're coming together. They're gelling. The biggest takeaway for me yesterday was the fact that the 4 linebackers had 26 tackles collectively, and really were 3 of the 4, the top 5 tacklers, 4 of the 5 were linebackers. And Steel Chambers, a former running back, out of Roswell, I mean, Blessed Trinity, he was like a freak show to watch run the ball. He is playing at such an elite level right now. And his athleticism, Al Washington's letting him play. Matt Barnes is letting him play. And he's making tackles. I think he had 6 solo tackles yesterday. I mean, he's really, really coming into his own. And I think he's going to be a special linebacker for Ohio State.
My favorite non-scoring play of the game yesterday was the final play of the first quarter. It was the first play of the 3rd drive for Maryland, and it was a little screen pass to the left-hand side that looked like it might go for significant yardage. And Steel Chambers started in the middle of the field, and I'm telling you, I think he fought off 5 blocks and just flew to the sideline, and it was a 2 or 3 yard gain when it looked like there was a wall of Maryland blockers. And I mean, I just remember watching that play and thinking, holy crap, like, how was this guy not a linebacker sooner? I mean, unbelievable instincts and effort. And for a group that really, really needed it, let's give some credit to Tommy Eichenberg too, because he was being shredded by Ohio State fans through a couple of games. Tommy Eichenberg's been playing his butt off the last 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, it's looking like this linebacker group is building some depth, which they so desperately needed to just get some games under their belt, because they had 4 seniors playing last year and the year before. It was going to take a little bit, but I think you're finally starting to see some of the promise with this group.
Absolutely. They're growing, they're developing, and Matt Barnes is setting them up for success. He's not asking too much of them. He's asking them what they can do. He's asking them to maximize their God-given potential, and you see it every single week. If they continue to do that, they continue to wrap people up when they're tackling, they're just going to get better, and they're building that term I always use. I call it sweat equity. With every rep they get, they're just getting better, and they're growing and they're maturing, and the Buckeye defense is reaping the benefits of it.
Ryan Day said about his defense after the game yesterday. Let me make sure I get this right here. He said, I think it's a young team that's growing. I think we've been more aggressive. We're building more confidence and more energy. And I specifically asked him about the linebackers and the kinds of adjustments he's seen them make midweek that have led to better performances. He said those guys are fitting in their roles now. They understand where they fit, and now they have some experience to go back upon. They're a very serious group, and to see them make plays, practice the way they've been practicing, their energy, he said that's a huge uplift for our whole defense. I think when you go through a loss, you have to figure out what the issues are and kind of get them fixed the best you can. You're not always going to be right, and you want to act, but you also can't overreact. And I think the Buckeyes have done a really good job of that. So that's I think that's probably a good way to wrap up the components of yesterday's game, unless you have any other thoughts.
No, I just, continue to go forward going into this bye week. And the big thing going into this bye week is going to get healthy and really get the ability to continue to build confidence in these guys and continue to let these guys foot play. One of the advantages of the last 3, blowout wins, it's gotten a lot of guys on the field that traditionally don't play. And usually in a bye week or this bye week, off week, whatever way you want to articulate it, traditionally those guys that haven't been playing, you have scrimmages, you let them go. Most of these guys will probably practice Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. The coaches will probably peel off a little bit Thursday, Friday, hitting the road recruiting. And that'll be a big thing for them because they're going to go see their top guys around the country It's a great opportunity for those coaches to fly out and go see guys that they need to go see. And, really the players are going to have a little bit of time to just kind of relax and take a step back. They're, and Mickey Mariotti is one of the best ever in the history of college football. He'll physically have these guys ready to roll and really, get them ready to go with the strength room and nutrition. It's going to be a really, really good week. And if they can come back and jump out on Indiana early, it'll be another continuation of the success that they've been building upon.
I've got one more thought here as we're transitioning to our national picture topic. And that thought is, around the receiver room, Emeka Egbuka, who, still hasn't really factored in much as a wide receiver yet. Golly, impressed with that kid. Watching him yesterday at his post-game press conference, he has spoken, I believe, once with us in the media throughout the course of the year. And then yesterday, post-game, 4 kick returns yesterday for 166 yards. He averaged 42 yards per kick return. Obviously, almost broke one. He had a 67-yard return off the left-hand side. This guy's going to be special. And you talk about a room that has some, first-round NFL talent in it. I don't know if he's going to develop into that. It certainly looks like he could. But the perfect segue into our discussion about the national picture is Jameson Williams, because Jameson Williams has always had the talent to be a number 1 wide receiver. He just had a hard time getting on the field because he was in a position room that had a bunch of guys that were just as good. And look what he's doing at Alabama right now. This kid's a problem. And Ohio State fans have known how good he is for a while. He just hasn't had a chance to really showcase that. And, I'm never going to fault a guy for saying, hey, it's time for me to try to go make this work elsewhere, because if he wants to play football after college, he's got to put something, really good together. I realize Alabama lost yesterday, but Jameson Williams certainly continued to showcase that he's got a bright future.
Yeah, he's a tremendous wide receiver, and it speaks, dividends to the talent in the wide receiver room at Ohio State, where a guy can go to the previously number 1 team in the country and be one of their top targets. It's remarkable. And I think that, you watched Alabama yesterday. It was an uncharacteristic Alabama, making mistakes, playing from behind, trying to play catch up on the road. And Nick Saban talked about it all week. This is a trap game. And he tried to get his guys prepared. And I think a lot of us, present company included, thought that Alabama was going to do what Alabama does. They were going to come out there. They were going to jump out early. They were going to, put to rest the Texas A&M fan base. But I mean, just to see the sacks, the penalty, it was a bad performance for Alabama. A lot to correct in Tuscaloosa. And for the first time, and I don't know how long that I can remember, I think we're going to go into this top 25 tomorrow, probably dropping those guys down. They'll still be in the top 10, but I think a couple other teams are going to jump ahead of them. I had them 7th in my top 25. I think that's where they're going to end up going. But a huge win for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies, who were kind of down and out and counted out against everyone else in the country after losing twice this year already. But it goes to show you, this is why we play games in college football. And you got to be excited about the parity this season. And everyone goes, I'm sick of watching Alabama. Well, guess what? They lost yesterday, and they've got to come play catch up. I'm sick of watching Ohio State. Well, they have a loss too. And really, it's going to be some new people at the table, some new reservations potentially in the college football playoff. I'm not saying Alabama doesn't make it to that point again this year, but it's a lot of fun for other teams, especially those group of 5 teams that are undefeated, that are playing their way into this.
So Alabama, obviously the big storyline yesterday was Nick Saban finally lost to a former assistant. He's now 24-1 against guys that he used to work with. They also had 100 straight wins against unranked opponents. I believe I saw ULM was the last team to beat them back in 2007. That is laughably long.
Brendan, I was playing college football that year. That's incredible.
Wow. I mean, look, Alabama can absorb the loss. Alabama, especially because Texas A&M has already lost twice. They need Alabama to lose again in order for Texas A&M to try to get to the SEC title game. Alabama can absorb this. They can still get to the SEC title game. And if they beat Georgia, and they're a one-loss team with a win over Georgia, they're going to get in. I mean, it's just going to happen. Georgia is sitting there in a position right now that is as good as anybody could possibly hope for. They're the only legitimate unbeaten team in the country. Yes, Oklahoma, I'm looking at you. Georgia's going to get into the playoff. I don't see a realistic scenario where the Bulldogs don't get in. Beyond that, Oklahoma continues to look vulnerable, although let's see what Lincoln Riley does with Caleb Williams. Is he going to play Caleb instead of Spencer Rattler? Sure looked pretty good yesterday. I know that wasn't the game plan going in, but Spencer Rattler's had a pretty tough stretch, and that unbelievable comeback from Oklahoma yesterday is leaving Longhorn fans right now, crying this morning still. I wonder if there's a chance they might see each other again in the Big 12 championship game. I guess we'll have to see how that goes, but I still think Oklahoma is vulnerable.
I agree. I think from Lincoln Riley's standpoint, you have to play Caleb Williams going forward. And I know Spencer Rattler's the most endorsed player in the history of college football. He's the face of a lot of different brands right now, but I don't think he's the face of Oklahoma football. It's yesterday to have Caleb Williams come in, lead the largest comeback in the history of the Red River rivalry. How do you not keep him as the guy going forward? He's done a tremendous job. The fans love him. The players love him. They're embracing him. He just won a historic game for them against a Texas team who really looked like they outclassed Oklahoma early in the game, and then Oklahoma just rallied back behind Caleb Williams. I think going forward, this is going to be who they are utilizing him as well. I think Oklahoma, I agree with you 1,000%. I still think they're vulnerable in the Big 12. There's so many things that happen in the Big 12 every single year. There's the games with, the Iowa States of the world, the Oklahoma States of the world. There's these teams that are good football teams that people don't give credit to, that go on and go win games against teams that they're technically not supposed to win against. And when they do that, it upends their entire conference and takes away from it. I mean, this is the same thing right now. We got the ACC. Wake Forest just quietly had the greatest start in Wake Forest history since 1944. So that's World War II for you historian buffs. Then no one's even
playing college football then too.
Yeah, I believe it was 1944. I think it's when there was the last year, or the first year after World War II that they actually played college football that season. They started that season off 7-0, and they're 6-0 right now. They came back and beat Syracuse in overtime last night, which isn't a sexy win, but they're a Power 5 team that's undefeated, that's still going to be in the teens until what? Like, who do they have to beat to be in the conversation? That's the one thing that I think that we omit right now in the college football playoff talk. And I'm not calling the Demon Deacons a legitimate contender yet, but if they run the table in the ACC and they're undefeated, how does the college football playoff look at a Power 5 ACC team and say, you're not getting in? We're going to take a one-loss team out of the SEC. We're going to take potentially a group of 5 team in Cincinnati, whoever wins the Big 10. I mean, there's so many different variables right now, and that's what makes it so much fun to watch and follow.
That's why I hate the 4-team setup. I've hated it from the moment they announced it. It's just stupid to me. And I've said this on several of our live streams in the past. In every other sport in America that they play college athletics in, every single sport at every other level, if you win your conference, you make the postseason, except for major college football. I don't get that. I think that's really, really dumb. You've got 5 Power 5 leagues and 4 playoff spots. I don't like that. Whether it's 6 or 8, however they want to make it, expand, they should have done that from the outset. I like the idea also of giving the best non-Power 5 team in the country a chance to compete, because that's what we love about postseason tournaments. Let's see if the Cinderella story can happen. Is Cincinnati good enough to beat Georgia? Last year, they darn near did. Maybe the Bearcats can compete with a team like that, or maybe they get blown out, but maybe they don't. That's what we love about the games. Give them a chance. Now, that said, the polls that are coming out today, both the coaches poll and the AP poll, should be out by this afternoon. I don't see a scenario where Georgia's not number 1. And after Iowa beats number 4 Penn State in 3 versus 4, I have to think Iowa is going to be the number 2 ranked team in the country. I'm very interested to see what happens next, because you've got undefeated Oklahoma. I can't stress this enough. They just continue to be not impressive to me. They keep winning, but they don't have the it factor for me. And maybe as time goes on, maybe I'll see that more. Oklahoma's undefeated, Cincinnati's undefeated, and all they've done is beat the crap out of the teams they should, like Temple this week, and beat Notre Dame and beat Indiana on the road. They certainly deserve to be in the conversation there. You've got the Buckeyes. You know, you've got Penn State, who's now saying, hey, look, our only loss was the number 2 ranked team in the country. And it's not like they got their doors blown off. In fact, Penn State may have won that game if Sean Clifford doesn't get hurt. You know, there's a whole good Alabama loses, you know, a tight game. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that have one loss that could say, hey, this is a good loss and we've got some good wins. So, man, I'm really excited to see what the polls look like here.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, Brendan, and I don't have all the answers. I have Cincinnati number 3 right now. I think Cincinnati's playing really, really well. They haven't had a letdown. I mean, they beat Temple 52-3 the other night. And people forget Temple's a good mid-major college football team, and traditionally are. You know, they came in with a couple wins, you know, and they're going to end up playing these American teams, and it's just going to be held against them. And I feel bad for Luke Fickell and his staff. They have to beat teams so convincingly going forward just to prove that they belong for a seat at the table. They competed with Georgia last year in a non-college football playoff, but, you know, group of 6, you know, the 6 New Year's 6 bowl games, and they played and they competed and they had their moments where they almost beat Georgia. This Georgia team is number 1 in the country. I think Cincinnati's number 3. I got Oklahoma 4. I got the Buckeyes at 5 because I just think Ohio State's offensively has just been so great. I dropped Penn State back down to 6. And the reason I say 6, they lost to an Iowa team by 3 that, you know, without their starting quarterback for the majority of the game. And really, at the beginning of the game, I mean, that game, and we talked about it live last night here on Buckeyes Now, Penn State jumped out 17-3 in that game. Sean Clifford gets hurt, and then kind of they lose a little bit of momentum going through that. I've got Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide dropping down to 7. And I know people are going, how could you have them drop down to 7? They lost to a 2-loss team that was previously unranked. And then Kentucky's got to make your top 10.
How do they not?
They're undefeated. They're going to travel to Athens this weekend. They're going to go play a really, really, really talented Georgia team. And I think that's where you're going to find out who these Kentucky Wildcats, you know, truly are. And then this is not going to be, a lot of people aren't going to be fans of this. I've got Michigan 9 and Oregon 10. So that's who I have kind of rounding out the top 10. That loss to Stanford, I can't get over. And no disrespect to Stanford. They just have not been that impressive this season. They beat USC and got, you know, Helton fired. They beat Oregon. I mean, Arizona State the other night looked like just in another class against those guys. So I think from that standpoint, and really, you know, Michigan needed a field goal late to beat Nebraska, who's a vastly improved Nebraska team. Kudos to Scott Frost, who's literally walks in every day and he sees his obituary rewritten as the head coach at Nebraska. I think he's doing a good job trying to keep that team together, and really not a great time to be at Nebraska. So that's really my top 10, if you will. And I got Michigan State being the other team that's on the outside looking in. Michigan State has quietly gone about their business, and they're doing a great job and really representing the conference well. And I think that's really where you see it right now with those teams. And then Coastal Carolina just continues to just punish people throughout the week. A lot of Big 12 teams were off this past week, so that they really didn't add a lot to the shakeup. But I think it'll be interesting going forward to see kind of who and what is going to transpire and who's going to continue to climb that way.
I am very interested to pick your brain on that Michigan-Nebraska game because I kind of got ripped for this last week, but you know, I'm just not in on Michigan yet. They're fine. They're not bad. I don't see them as a legitimate college football playoff caliber team yet. I don't think they're in that conversation. Are they a top 10 team right now? Yeah, I think they deserve that. They haven't lost yet. But much like Oklahoma, they've done what they're supposed to do, right? They beat up on Western Michigan and Northern Illinois. They beat a Washington team that lost the week before to an FCS school. They hung in there with Rutgers and Nebraska. I can't get super excited about that. I realize what the score was against Wisconsin. Wisconsin stinks. Their defense is good. Their offense is miserable. So I don't know, man. Michigan's defense is better. I'm good with acknowledging the fact their defense looks better. Offensively, they don't scare me.
No, they run the football. They control the clock. They're defensively, I think, a really good football team. They play sound defense. They're doing a lot of good things. I think up until last night, they were the only only college football team that had not been behind in a game all
Yep.
season. And it's something to look at and think about with this Michigan team. And, I think really Adrian Hutchinson has really kind of revolutionized the leadership of that program from the inside out. And really, they're playing good football. And at the end of the day, no facility in college football has a trophy for congratulations. They covered the spread 17 times in a row, or they won by this margin or that margin. All people care about at the end of the day are wins and losses. And right now they're undefeated. They're winning games. It doesn't matter who you're winning against. You win, and you shouldn't be penalized for who you beat. And they're going to have their opportunity to put up or shut up. As they know, this Big Ten schedule is far more daunting than it's been in years past. And, if they continue to play and continue to win close games, who's not to say we don't see the final week of the season with a potentially unbeaten and a one-loss Ohio State team to make possibly one of the best games at noon in college football. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there is a possibility of it. And in the way that this is trending, it could potentially happen.
And look, I want that. I've gone on record saying I want Michigan to be good. The Big Ten is better. The rivalry game is more fun. College football is better when they are not a laughingstock. And for the last few years, they haven't been competitive. Okay, that's not fair. They've been competitive. They have not been at the same level as, where people's expectations of Michigan football should be. I shouldn't say they're not competitive. They've absolutely been competitive.
Yeah.
But they have not been able to take that step forward. And it starts at the quarterback spot. They have not had an answer at quarterback. Is Cade McNamara that guy? I mean, he's playing fine.
They're even rotating.
McCarthy. Yeah, I mean, J.J. McCarthy.
If you're rotating quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback.
Right.
I always say that. If you have, and I've always been this way, and I've been part of teams where we rotated quarterbacks. If you have rotating guys, that means you don't have the guy. Like right now, like Kyle McCord's a great quarterback. You don't see Ryan Day going, well, it's 3rd and 7. Let's get Kyle McCord in the game. No, CJ Stroud is the quarterback. These teams that are great teams have their guy. They have their quarterback. The 2-quarterback system is really tough to execute. It's really tough to continue to do. And I think when you do that, it just once again is a testament. You don't have that guy. And look at this right now, the 2 teams that we're talking about that are undefeated in Power 5 teams that we don't feel are at the right step yet. I think we still think that they're kind of eating ribeyes while everyone else is eating filet mignon. They are teams without a quarterback. They're teams that are rotating quarterbacks right now. And that's Oklahoma as well. They're trying to figure this out. They're going from the anointed Spencer Rattler to Caleb Williams, and they're trying to go from that standpoint. Quarterback, there's one quarterback. That's why it's so important. That's why I'm recruiting. I think Ohio State, you look at the way that they've recruited quarterbacks over the last decade, they're going to make sure they get the guy. And even if the guy doesn't like being there as not the guy, they're going to continue to have a room full of guys that can be the guy. And I've never used guy that many times in that amount of time that I'm speaking. So kudos to Guy Fieri. I don't know where I'm going. But yeah.
Is there a team? I realize UCLA has already lost twice. I'm looking at UCLA's results here. So they beat Hawaii. They beat LSU at the Rose Bowl, which was a good win. They lost to Fresno State in a tight loss. They beat Stanford. They lost to Arizona State, who has had some really good moments and a couple of frustrating moments this year. And UCLA beat Arizona. UCLA plays Oregon on October 23rd. So that's coming up in basically 2 weeks now. That's probably their only really tough game the rest of the year. Given that they've lost twice, I have a really hard time seeing them make the college football playoff out of the Pac-12. But I'm interested to know if there is a Pac-12 team in your mind that you think could make the playoff. Is Oregon's loss to Stanford too much for them to overcome when some other programs that have one loss have a better loss?
Yeah, it's too much. And unless the Stanford Cardinal runs the table, there's no way. You can't look back at that loss and say, okay, that's the one that they get. And like, what's Oregon going to do?
Well, they beat the Buckeyes, right? So is that what they're hanging their hat on? Is like, hey, we beat a team who's right there.
100%. They have to. And then they're going to look at it and they're going to say, oh, yeah, we beat Ohio State. But I think the one thing that you look at, who decides the college football playoff? People. Human beings make the decision. They get in a room and they look around, they watch tape, they break these guys down. They're not going to say, even if Oregon runs the table, they're not going to sit there and go, well, we want to get this Oregon team in because they beat Ohio State in week 3. The week 3 team that they beat, or the week 2 team rather, that they beat, is not the same team that we're watching every week in and week out. They're actually playing defense. They're scoring at an unbelievable amount of, and they're explosive. They're fun to watch. They're going to sit there and go, all right, who's going to be more likely to put tickets in the seat? What fans are going to travel? Ohio State's fans are, if not the best, some of the top 4 best fan base in the country. They know if they put if Ohio State's playing in New Zealand, they're going to sell out the stadium with people. There's going to be flights out of Columbus going to New Zealand to figure out how to go watch these guys play. That's exactly what's going to happen. The college football playoff, if Ohio State runs the table, they have to put them in. Oregon runs the table. I mean, you were there. I mean, Oregon doesn't travel that well. They don't have the same fan base. They don't have, it's just not who they are. It's even regionally where they live. Football's not as important in the Pacific Northwest.
Not the college game, no.
No, the college game, not even close. It's not. And now you could argue you have the 12th man in Seattle and everything else. But realistically, that doesn't matter to the vast majority of people in that area. I mean, for the most part, you even see even when USC was great, people leave the game at halftime. Oh, we're going to USC. We're going to go watch it. Oh, it's an afternoon game. Good. We got a bunch of other things to do in LA.
It's the West Coast, they will follow their college sports teams when they're good, but the fans evaporate. It's a pro sports part of the country. They're all about the Lakers and the Dodgers and the Portland Trail Blazers and the Seattle Seahawks right up and down the coast, the Giants, the 49ers. It doesn't matter. I mean, I totally agree with you. College sports are a fun thing to do on a Saturday when they're good, and when they're not good, whatever. It's just,
and that's why you look at Ohio State. The best connection that they have set up is a quarterback from two guys from California, two guys from the West Coast, in Chris Olave and CJ Stroud connecting on a daily basis. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, I actually thought about this yesterday. I'm watching Ohio State play, and when they come out of the 11 that were on the field, one guy is from the state of Ohio in the starting 11 for the Ohio State Buckeyes offense. People are flocking to the Midwest to do what? To play college football. They want to come to Columbus because Columbus's professional sports team is the Buckeyes. These guys go to these other games. It just isn't the same. And until that changes,
I'm calling the Blue Jackets on you.
Throw the Blue Jackets on me.
And the crew.
The fans that are watching the Blue Jackets at Medical Mutual or whatever the whatever the arena is down there, I know it's a little bit different from that standpoint. So your traditional hockey fan, your traditional college football fan, there is some overlay. But at the end of the day, football's king. And I think that's why guys will make that jump, will go across the country for the collegiate experience because it's just so much different.
One more thing I want to hit on here in the SEC before we wrap up. There was one other ridiculously good game yesterday, and it was a shootout between Ole Miss and Arkansas, two programs that the week prior lost to Georgia and Alabama, and it felt like everybody just sort of wrote them off as, well, they're out because they lost. And it was a 52-51 game. Ole Miss at 4-1, they're playing Tennessee next weekend. I got to think that Ole Miss could make a little bit of noise and could be potentially a New Year's 6 bowl team. Ole Miss is scheduled the rest of the way. They play Tennessee, LSU. They'll play Auburn, who's going to be a top 20 team. They've got one more, cupcake game, if you want to call it that, Liberty. They'll play Texas A&M. They'll play Vanderbilt, and they'll play Mississippi State. I don't really see a scenario where they can make it to the SEC title game, but I do think Ole Miss has showcased a pretty good ability, and I would not be surprised if they're a top 12 team this week.
Yeah, I mean, they could be right there. I think they will be. I think I had them. I think I had them 14th overall. I put them right behind Oklahoma State, and the only reason I did that was because Oklahoma State. You can't. I always have a problem knocking a team because they didn't play yesterday. From that standpoint, but really, I've got Ole Miss and Arkansas right there in the teens, 14 to 15, respectively. I really think that yesterday, just kudos to Sam Pittman at the end of the game. We score, he's going for 2. I just love it. Sam Pittman doesn't care when he leaves Arkansas, he's going to retire. He's openly said it. He goes, I'm not looking for another job. I'm here at Arkansas. I love to have it. And two of the great personalities in college football. In Lane Kiffin and Sam Pittman. I mean, a juxtaposition of men, just the way they kind of gotten to where they're at. But really fun to watch those two compete yesterday. Ole Miss, one of the things I don't think people realize, they had missing running backs. They had guys that were missing up front on the offensive line. They still went and scored points because they ate a lot of humble pie the week before against Alabama. And, or popcorn, if you will. I guess humble popcorn would be the thing that they should have eaten accordingly. But what I've really seen out of Ole Miss is, Lane Kiffin knows how to score. Defensively, they struggled last year. They're struggling a little bit this year, but they're a good football team, and those kids have fun playing for Lane. And I think that you're going to see this team continue to win a lot of football games. And don't knock Liberty. Liberty's not a cupcake of the mid-major games to pick up there. You could go pick up East Popcorn State or Mickey Mouse Tech and really just know you're going to roll through. But Liberty's done a nice job. So I don't want to knock. I don't want to knock the Flames and the Reverend Hugh Freeze and what they've done.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I do expect Ole Miss to put up 1,000 points against them. Ole Miss's offense is ridiculously good. I appreciate that the Liberty Flames have made some nice strides as a program, and I will rely on your expertise in that regard because I have not followed Liberty that closely.
I know this if you're going into your athletic director's office right now and you're asking for guarantee games, Liberty's not at the top of that list. There's a lot of other teams you could ask for, and I can say the Flames are not the ones you're looking for right there out of the gate. They've done a nice job. They really have down there. And I don't think anybody here cares about the Liberty football program as a whole, but just a shout out to those guys. They've done a really, really nice job of the building a program from an FCS program 3 years ago to now being a team that last year was almost undefeated going into the final week of the season.
That's why we have you on, and that's why people come, because you are such a fountain of knowledge. I'm not going to be able to tell you that, but your ability to tell us about the Liberty Flames is exactly, I think, what people love to hear too. Hey, it's been a ton of fun. Great conversation this morning. We like to do this most Sundays. I know there's quite a few of you that have joined us. We are certainly willing to take questions along the way throughout the course of the week too, and have enjoyed following the comment section. A lot of you are pretty active, so thanks for a fun morning in that regard. Buckeyes obviously right now look like one of the best teams in college football. I'm not sure we would have thought we'd say that after week 2, but these last 4 games have been really impressive. Almost 55 points per game during this 4-game win streak for Ohio State. Offensively, they look unbelievably good. They're getting healthy. In fact, even this last week, the Buckeye, game day status report was as good as it's been all year. You're going into your idle week, and now the meat grinder of the Big Ten schedule with Indiana coming up and then Penn State coming to home. It's going to be really, really fun these next couple of weeks as Ohio State tries to push forward and maybe make a chase at a college football playoff spot. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Hey, Buckeyes win, they're in. They got to keep doing this and doing it convincingly. Keep scoring a lot of points. And like I said, the human element of the college football playoff is dictated by people that want to see certain teams play. Who right now does not want to tune in and watch this offense? That's my question for you. And if they can continue to do that, continue to score, record number of points, CJ Stroud's going to become a household name, not only in the state of Ohio, but across the country, along with Travion Henderson and this young, explosive offense. This is what people want to see. And I think if the Buckeyes continue to do that, I think you and I are getting ready to do one of these after a college football playoff game.
Can't wait. Ohio State 66, Maryland 17. Buckeyes are 5-1, and they are rolling. For our coach, Tommy Zagorski, I'm Brendan Gulick. We've got lots of coverage planned even this week while the Buckeyes are on a bye. Hope you'll come back here real soon. Please check out BuckeyesNow.com for all the latest and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you make sure you don't miss these conversations. We'll see you soon. We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.